This Week in Startups is brought to you by Lead Genius. Higher quality leads and customized customer data at scale. Schedule a free demo at leadgenius.com/twist. And Squarespace. Start building your website today at squarespace.com. Enter offer code TWIST at checkout to get 10% off. Squarespace. Build it beautiful.
Hey everybody, it's a fascinating episode of This Week in Startups. Today, Bryan Johnson is with us. He founded Braintree, which was a company that did transactions, payments, and he sold it to eBay, made a bunch of money, and then created the OS Fund. And now he's investing in what I consider some of the most important areas of technology, longevity, biology, drones, artificial intelligence, and he's a really, really intelligent, considered guy who's trying to change the world and investing all this money he made from his eBay transaction in interesting companies that move the human species forward. It's a rambling, awesome discussion about the future and religion and God and, terrorism and everything in between. It's a fascinating discussion by somebody who you probably don't know, but who's doing some really, really interesting investing in the world. Stick with us.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah, money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis, and we host this show twice a week, every week, 104 times a year. And somebody asked me just recently, hey Jason, is that exhausting for you? My God, 104 shows a year. And I said, you know what? For me, there's nothing better than talking to a founder about their vision, because you get to see the future. You get to see what brilliant people, driven people, intelligent people think should happen to our species, to our world. This is heady stuff, right? What a privilege and an honor it is for me to sit here every week and be a conduit for the 100,000 people who watch the show and get to ask the questions that you yourself are thinking at home. What's going to happen to humanity? What's going to happen with longevity? Are we all going to die? And is it going to be because of famine or water or energy? Is this planet even going to be here in 100 years? Global warming? God, dictators? There's a lot of crazy stuff going on, right? Sometimes it feels a little out of control. The pace of technology is extraordinary, isn't it? And you know what? This show is like, for me, it's a rudder. It gives me like a real great sense of balance, because I am so optimistic getting to have these 104 conversations every year, year in and year out. And as a crazy extrovert, when I leave this show, I have so much energy and so much positivity and joy towards the future, typically. Unless I have you've had some of the guests on the program who are racists or insane or misogynist or whatever. So we bring people on the program who aren't necessarily the greatest people in the world, because we want to see that side of the world too, right? We have some dark moments. We share those too, because we want to understand them. But today's going to be a great episode because Bryan Johnson is here. Now, who's Bryan Johnson? He founded a company called Braintree. He sold it to eBay. He did really well for himself. And one of the things I always appreciate, because listen, I know a lot of people who do well for themselves. And we have this crazy thing in our society, right? Like, things are moving so fast. Technology companies can become worth a lot of money. Individuals can become worth a lot of money. And then people do such boring, inane stuff with their money when they get successful. I know a lot of these people. They just become boring people. They get concerned about houses. They get concerned about nonsense. But Bryan's not like that. Bryan's doing a lot of interesting stuff. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
All right, let's start with Braintree. What the hell was Braintree?
Yeah.
And why did eBay buy it for what, like a couple $100 million?
Right. So we help businesses accept credit card payments. So customers included Uber and Airbnb, GitHub. And
I've heard a couple of these companies.
Yeah. And from the outset, I really wanted to build a company with a soul. And so we had three goals as a team. One is I wanted engineers to say we're the best payments platform in the industry. Two, that our team would say is the best company they ever worked for. And three, that our customers would write us love letters. I thought if we got those three things right, then
just love letters. Why wouldn't people write love letters to their merchant account provider or whatever? Their payments platform.
It's true. It was a crazy idea. But it happened. Like our
literally,
customers,
people wrote
they would write us love letters and say, "I can't believe it. It's amazing. They use the support.
Yeah.
I can tell you care so much." And that's the kind of vibe we wanted to maintain inside the company.
And it did pretty well. When did you start? How old were you?
I was 27
And where was it based? Here?
in Chicago.
In Chicago. Yeah, not easy to build a company in Chicago.
I mean, I guess, so I was complaining one day to a friend of mine about I couldn't find enough engineers, and he was based here in San Francisco. He said, yeah, man, like Zynga just stole my best engineer for $1 million of restricted stock and $500,000 a year in cash. I was like, all right, like,
I'm going to shut up now.
I'll stick with my problems in Chicago.
Yeah, and you got Waterloo right there, man. You just go up to Toronto and grab some of those university. What is that university in Waterloo? I guess Waterloo University or something.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great engineers in Canada too. You can rip down from there. So you sold the company and you did very well for yourself. And then, most interestingly, and I don't want to just gloss over Braintree. I know it was a great success, but there's a lot of payment companies out there. I want to get into what you're doing now because it's totally fascinating to me. You started the OS Fund.
Yeah.
Now this fund has no LPs except for yourself.
Right.
So you're betting your own money. What is OS Fund?
So the context on this is, I guess there's some backstory to this. When I was 21, I just returned from the States after living in Ecuador for 2 years. And I lived
in Ecuador. Yeah.
among extreme poverty, and I saw how these people lived and the challenges they had, and they didn't have a shot at life. And it changed how I understood myself, the world, my ambitions, what I wanted to do. And I came home and I decided that I wanted to become an entrepreneur, retire by 30, and then spend the rest of my life trying to improve people's lives.
Okay. So just think average goals.
And so I went about.
How did you wind up in Ecuador?
I was serving a mission for the Mormon church.
Oh, so you're a Mormon.
I was Mormon.
You were a Mormon.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating thing. God,
Yeah.
we got to get into that. I saw the Book of Mormon. I'm like fascinated. So how does that, so as part of being a Mormon, you have to go and be a missionary. Is that correct?
It's strongly encouraged, but borderline mandatory. I mean, it's right around there.
And they send you out. And did you see the Book of Mormon?
No. Actually,
Are you allowed to see it?
Like,
Is it like
3 months ago, I saw it.
You did?
Yeah.
And what did you think? Was it funny to you, or was it mean and spirited to you?
So it was humorous, and I understood the humor. I could see why people within the Mormon faith would find offense to it because it was crass in certain areas. But they got the gist of the religion, and it just depends on the lens you have when you watch it.
Right. So you go there, and you're wearing your white shirt and black pants. Is that standard uniform? Like you have to dress like a nerd?
Right.
You're dressed like super proper. You go down there. What do these people think of you when you show up and they're super poor and you're dressed like, super, neat and clean and you're preaching the gospel? What is it like?
So they're remarkably receptive and nice and kind. I mean, some people, of course, try to avoid us, and like we go to doors and knock, and the kid would be like, "My mom told me to tell you she's not home."
Yeah.
So stuff like that. But I mean, people are generally very nice. I mean, in Ecuador they were, and so they had seen Mormon missionaries around and Jehovah's Witnesses and other evangelicals, and so it was a kind community.
Yeah. So you go down there and you're working. What, in like a village trying to help people build wells, like literally, like in the Book of Mormon?
One day a week we'd go out and do service. We'd try to build people's homes, or we'd help them with whatever they'd done. If there was a natural disaster, we'd be pitching in. Like we tried to be useful to in people's lives in many ways. When you teach them something, but also when you actually perform an act of service. But that was the overall goal, is to try to be useful and helpful.
To be useful and helpful. And that's embedded in the Mormon religion.
That's right.
To be of service in a way.
That's right. I mean, it is a sincere desire of the Mormon community to help people, right? And it comes through a lens of like a gospel lens, but also comes through a lens of like trying to be a good person. And it's sincere and genuine that we're taught to do that.
Right. You know what? I kind of find it beautiful and, very charming and nice. I mean, even though I think religion's a little bit wacky, are there wacky aspects to it, or aspects that are just like Christianity's a little wacky, or Scientology? Are there aspects of it that are a little strange?
I mean, there always is, right? It depends on your lens. And
Jesus coming back from the dead.
And since I've
kind of a zombie, right?
I mean, since I've separated from the church, I mean, I do have different perspectives and lenses than I did before.
Right.
And I can understand why people maintain certain viewpoints. But,
right. So you're magnanimous about it. Is it like Scientology? I have a lot of friends who are Scientologists, but they have this disconnection theory, like where you leave and you can't speak to anybody anymore. Are they like really hard on you about that leaving?
No. I mean, everyone's been very kind and gracious with me. I mean, it's been
that's great.
Yeah.
So you have this really moving experience going down there and helping people. You say, I want to go back and help them. And then how does this relate to the OS Fund? You make a bunch of money, obviously, from Braintree.
Yeah.
And then what? You all of a sudden have this realization like, oh my God, I did promise myself I was going to go help the planet.
Well, so I mean, at the age of 21, I made that resolve. Like, I'm going to spend my life trying to improve people's lives. I don't want to work a job, work until I'm 65, then retire and drive around in an RV visiting national parks.
Right.
And so I thought, I explored options. I thought, what could I do? And I looked at the things you find in college, like UN model nations or going to Africa, like all the things you find in a college environment, but none of them really made sense to me. And so I thought, you know what, I'll just punt on this decision. I'll become an entrepreneur, I'll make all that money, and I'll figure out then. So I had basically a decade to think about this. And during that decade, of course, I went through research, I guess, trying to understand myself through the Mormon lens and not through the Mormon lens. And then I started studying a lot of science and technology. And in the end, I kind of came to this conclusion, like I looked at humanity and where we're going, like you said in your introduction, like where is the human species going on this pale blue dot?
Yeah.
And it became clear to me, I guess the thesis of the OS Fund is that we're at this incredibly unique time and place, that we have these tools of creation like computer software, genomics, biology, 3D printing, virtual reality, artificial intelligence that literally allows us to program any part of our existence, anything we can imagine. And so the most pressing question in my mind is, what kind of world are we going to build?
Right.
Because we've always been defined by our tools.
Right.
And so the fund invests in companies that are building the tools of creation that will allow us to build this kind of world we can imagine.
All right. When we get back from the commercial break, I want you to tell me what you think the world could look like in the best case scenario, and what you think the world could look like if we're not considered in how we deploy these tools on This Week in Startups. Hey everybody, let me take a moment to tell you about Lead Genius. This is a great company. I love it so much because we use it here at launch. We have made tens of thousands of dollars in profit using this product. And I love it so much that I invested. What is Lead Genius? Lead Genius allows you to, very simply, augment and make your sales team bionic by having them get better leads, more leads, reactivating leads, and taking the bottom third of what salespeople do and hate and outsourcing it. Listen, your sales executives, these high-priced people who you're paying, in some cases 6 figures, some cases, even higher, they don't want to sit there all day and put their data into their CRM system, their customer relationship management system. They don't want to hunt and peck for leads on LinkedIn and AngelList and Crunchbase. They don't want to do all that work. And that work is repetitive, and that work is hard, it's tedious, and there's a certain group of people out there who love doing it. And there's software and technology you can apply to that process that makes it more efficient. Well, that's what Lead Genius has done. And so for low hundreds to low thousands of dollars a month, you can create essentially a team that goes and looks at your CRM, and then they say, hey, you talk to these 3 people at the organization. We're going to update their information, and we're going to reactivate those leads. And they did this for us, and they reactivated a lead that wound up spending tens of thousands of dollars with us at one of our events. You can import all of this directly into your CRM or your marketing automation software. In other words, you can give them a login to your system. They're trustworthy. They have NDAs, all that stuff in place, and they can take these high-value leads and get them into your system. Stripe uses it. Weebly uses it. Signify uses it. We use it. Go to leadgenius.com/twist and get a free review and audit of your sales process. So they'll look at your entire sales process and say, hey, your lead gen could be optimized this way. Your opening email is lame. I would delete it immediately. Here's how you can make your opening email, your opening salvo better. Here's what a drip campaign is. Here's how to do it. They're going to do that audit for people who are fans of This Week in Startups for free. That's leadgenius.com/twist. If you're in the mode at your startup or a medium-sized company or even big company of starting to sell, you have to use Lead Genius. I'm telling you that you'll spend a small amount of money and you'll get a giant return. So they'll do this free calibration with 10 high leads for free as well. They're going to get you 10 really high leads for free. Go ahead and go to leadgenius.com/twist. High quality leads, better reporting, automation, segmentation. They do all this research. It's just low quality leads are a waste of time. You need the high quality leads. You need those Glengarry, Glen Ross leads. You need the good ones. And that's what Lead Genius does. That's why I invested in the company. And that's why I pay the company to help my sales team. All right, let's get back to this amazing episode. Welcome back to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis. My guest today, Bryan Johnson, the founder of Braintree, which he sold, of course, famously to eBay for $800 million. Not bad. Almost a unicorn.
Almost.
That's certainly a unicorn shortly after you sold it. And he is now doing the OS Fund, which you heard just before is going to try to work on the tools that are really going to define our reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence. What do you think, when I left you, I asked you this question, what do you think the world's going to look like if we do a great job with these tools? And conversely, what do you think is at stake if we really are not cognizant of exactly how powerful these tools are?
I totally agree, because every technology we develop can be used for both good purposes and poor purposes.
Sure. Nuclear energy.
Exactly. And so when we invest in companies, I really want to find a founder who I think is, or founders who are future literate, who understand the general context of the world and where we could go. I myself don't have a specific vision about where the world can go or should go, but I do think the general principles of, I would like to see a world where 7 billion plus ideologies and belief systems can coexist and thrive together.
Yeah.
That no dogmatism needs to exist, that we can all build our own world so long as there's principles that we don't do harm to each other. But these tools of creation will literally allow any of us to program it. And so I'd like to see a world thrive in radical creativity and compassion and using these tools of creation.
So when you look at something, somebody was asking me the other day, what makes you worried? Actually, I was on a Product Hunt AMA, which you can go see on producthunt.com. And thank you for having me on, Eric and Ryan. It was really interesting. Somebody asked me, like, what I worry about. Am I worried about energy?
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? I think like climate control and climate change, I think we'll figure it out. It's going to be hard. Certainly, some places might be underwater. Some places might turn into deserts. But there's a lot of planet left. We'll be okay. Energy, I think we're going to have free energy, actually. We're figuring out the solar thing. The one thing that at the top of my list was like, I'm really worried about the radical Islam, which is a very small contingent of Islam, only 5%, maybe 10 max, and people who are potentially insane and have nuclear weapons, like Kim Jong-un and Putin, right? This is just such a wild card. It's completely out of our control. What do you think these tools, I mean, is there some connection between virtual reality and the technology you're talking about, 3D printing, and dealing with the fact that there's a contingent of, let's say, Muslims, 5%, and it might be 1% of Christians or 5% of Christians, who have a very violent streak in them and who want to kill all the apostates. I mean, this is the actual position of ISIS and other people. If you're not part of the Islamic State, you're going to be beheaded. Literally, that's their shtick. We behead people on camera. We're not chopping their arms and legs off. We're specifically cutting their heads off because that's what it says in our text. And again, to be clear, this is not, 95% of Muslims do not think this. It's just this radical contingent, but they seem to be drowned out, those 95%. What's the connection here? How do you see that? Are we all going to be in virtual reality and avoid the insane ISIS people?
So I guess I would match my list with yours and say the three things I'm most concerned about. One is our systems of cooperation, how humans get along, right? Today we have government, right? That basically within the United States of America, our government helps us cooperate, we reconcile our differences, we allocate resources, we have laws. So our systems of cooperation and reconciliation, it's supremely important we get that right. So I'm interested in that. And number two is ideologies. Any belief and value system, like you said, that compels humans to behave a certain way. And it could be culture within your company, it could be culture within the city, it could be anything, right? And my largest ambition is to reorient the identity and aspirations of humankind and do so in a way where we flourish together. And then three is that we are making scientific breakthroughs at a pace that is consistent with the demands of the Earth. So for example, you talk about climate change, right? We, of course, can try to change habits and try to do international treaties to lower carbon output.
Back to that number one, which is the rule set that we live by, governments, et cetera.
But again, it's just like, can we actually build technological solutions that have breakthroughs that help us solve these complicated challenges? And to me, like all three of those things are critical for us to survive on this.
They're super intertwined too, because you do have instances where entrepreneurs and technologists can just totally outstrip the rule set, of government and just leave government in the dust. But then you have these moments in time where the government can totally squash innovation. Which one do you think, if you're going to apply yourself, is going to get net the best result? Which is to say, should we even bother with government? I mean, I have a lot of friends who are obsessed with this government stuff, and it seems like they're just wasting their time. Are they wasting their time?
So after selling Braintree, I actually spent 8 months pursuing this question. And we put together a plan about how we were going to try to rewrite the operating system of government. Like, how do we actually reconfigure governance to be consistent with this future we're contemplating?
Yeah.
And in the end, I felt like it was an endeavor not worth my time at this moment in my life.
Right.
Because it felt like almost like a lottery. Like, I couldn't systematically build a product, get it to work, get it accepted, and get customers. So
product market fit is a little bit out of your control.
Right, exactly. It's almost like you never know what's going to work or not versus building a company. So I decided to start the fund and work on the actual technologies, the tools of creation that will define our future.
Let's talk about some of the investments. I'm looking right now. I have on my website here on my computer. We can pull it up. Matter, MTTR.net. What is this company?
Yeah, so MatterNet, they make autonomous vehicles or drones.
Yes.
And the belief on that is that autonomous vehicles will do for transportation what the mobile phone or the smartphone did for communications. So you contemplate what it did in Asia and Africa and how it changed their whole economies and lives. Autonomous vehicles can do the same both in developed and developing worlds. So
it will leapfrog in the way people in Africa didn't get PCs in large part. I mean, there were some like one in every, for every 100 people or something. But their internet experience is going to be largely on the phone.
Exactly.
So the transportation of goods and services and people maybe are going to be quadcopters?
If you were to go to Africa and build out the same road system we have here in the States, it would take, I think, $4 trillion in 23 years.
Wow.
And autonomous drone vehicles leapfrogs most of that, moving things from point A to point B.
Yeah, it seems like getting drugs from one village to the other, just something as simple as that. Like when you think about anti-venoms, stuff like that need to be refrigerated. I was talking to somebody and they were just like, you know what happens? We put blood in different locations. I said, why don't you just put blood everywhere, and put anti-venom there? They're like, okay, well, the anti-venom is $10,000. Blood is hundreds of dollars. And by the way, their electricity grid goes offline every 10 days.
Yeah.
And it all gets spoiled.
Yep.
So you're better off just literally sending a drone and dropping a package of blood when somebody needs blood.
That's what they started, I think, in Bhutan, where they went first, to take medications to remote villages.
So when you invest in a company like this, where did you find the company? And then what is your role in it? You just put $1 million in and then you go away? Or are you the kind of investor who wants to dabble and be involved and be a board member? Well,
so when I sold Braintree, I went on this expedition trying to figure out where I'd spend time and energy. And so I called up a couple of my friends who I thought were working on the most audacious endeavors. And I said, who are the two most capable people you know? And so I'd have conversations with those two and say, what are you up to? What do you think about the world? And I'd say, 2 more names, please. And I built out this network of 200 or 300 people I spoke to in 3 to 5 months. And so I found them through those conversations.
Got it. So somebody told you these are the most capable people I know.
Yeah.
And here, pull up the video here. It's pretty compelling. I mean, this is the Steve Jobs, not Steve Jobs, what's his name? Bezos. I jumped ahead in the video, but basically there's a little box in the middle of his drone where he put an apple in the box, and then it takes off, and obviously this is going to go somewhere and bring this person the apple, and it's going to land wherever they are, and they're going to go in, and there's a little compartment, for those of you who are listening and not watching, and it's very sexy. There's a little apple-like box in the center, and she opens it up, and lo and behold, there's an apple. This is going to happen soon, huh?
It's happening.
It's happening. What do you mean it's happening?
They signed a deal with Switzerland to do mail delivery as a pilot this summer.
So in Switzerland, Matter.net will be delivering mail to locations that I guess are hard to drive to?
I'm not sure the details.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's something to that effect.
Mail delivery system in a developed world is an interesting pilot.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
And what do you think the limitations of this technology will be in the short term, and what do you think it'll look like in 10 years? Because right now, obviously, his battery life is just ridiculous. It's 20 minutes or something.
I think technologically we can solve the problems. I think regulation is the biggest issue, and I think privacy will be an issue. And I think it's appropriate that we have these considerations on these things.
Yeah.
So, it's going to go at a certain pace, and there'll be push and pull between the different competing interests, but I'm bullish on the area generally.
I was not bullish on it. I have to say, I was a big skeptic on these things. And then something happened in the last gen. I went to see Chris over at 3D Robotics, and I went to see my guys at Skycatch. I'm not an investor in either of those companies, unfortunately, because like an idiot, I actually overthought the space and thought I was smart, like, hey, this is going to take too long and it's too dangerous. They actually figured out how to make these things much less dangerous already.
Yeah.
You can't crash them on somebody's head. If you try to lower them really fast, they're like, yeah, no, we're going to come down from 400 feet at a slow pace.
Yeah.
And then if you lose range, I was like, what if you lose range with the radar or the batteries go out on the thing? It's like, oh yeah, no, it knows where it took off from. It just goes home. And next is the LiDAR and some of this stuff, crash avoidance and visual systems.
Exactly.
You're not going to be able to crash these things. I think that literally trying to crash them, the systems will not let themselves crash. It'll be like self-driving cars. Do you think people are going to be able to fly in these? Do you think there'll be, these sort of like hybrid with like eight copters and, some wings so it extends the battery and we'll just be flying around in these things?
It's hard not to see a future where that would happen.
Yeah. When will we be flying towards these?
I'm terrible at that. I don't know.
So that's why it's fun.
Yeah, it's along the path.
Give me the over/under. Let's gamble. Is it over? we could do a long bet here.
Okay.
You want to set the line, or do you want to pick over/under? Because I could set the line, you can pick over/under. Then we have to define the bet. So the define of the bet is that somebody in a major city is able to fly from. Well, we could just say. Yeah, like how about you're able to buy one of these devices and fly to work?
So I know this is currently a contemplated project at the X Prize.
Sure.
And they have designs, and someone's put together a proposal. They think they figured out how to do it.
So a consumer can buy a quadcopter that would fly them to work. The first consumer buys one to commute to work. Not they buy it for like field testing or whatever, but you can buy, or maybe just you can buy one commercially and fly it in the United States. That's it. A consumer can buy one commercially and fly it in the United States. Forget about my cockamamie thing with that. So you have to either
I'll say 13.5 years.
And then I have to pick over or under.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good line. Oh, I like it. All right, now wait, what are the stakes? Is this like a sushi lunch? What do you like, sushi?
Sushi, yeah.
Okay, so omakase.
Yeah,
so it's
that
unlimited.
Works. That works.
Okay, it could be masa, it could be anything, right? So this could be $1,000 bill here. Yeah. We're going to cap it out, because it's 13 years from now, we have to do it for inflation. But okay, so we're going to cap it out, sushi for two, and we'll cap it out at $500 a person. Okay. God, that's such a good line. That's such a good line. Because I have arguments for why it would take longer.
Right.
Which are regulation, battery life, safety, but these things come quick. But you're going to buy it commercially because price is no object. I'm taking the under. I'm taking the under, and I think I'm wrong, but I want it to happen.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take the under. What do you think?
It'll be a worthy $500 if you're...
Yes. All right, there we go. Okay, put it on the calendar, please. Let's put it there, long bet, and then we have to put it into YouTube or something and put a calendar date. 13.5 years. I took the under. Okay. Okay, let's go on to another investment here. Let me just check my time. How many minutes am I into this? God, here we go. Oh, we're at 23. All right, listen. Let's take another commercial break. When we get back, I want to see some of these artificial intelligence, 3D printing, and longevity companies that you're investing in when we get back on This Week in Startups. Listen, I could talk to you all day about Squarespace. I love this product. All of our sites are built on Squarespace. Why? Because I can just say, hey, Bryce, hey, Ashley, hey, Jackie, just change this on the Squarespace site. Hey, can we get this up on the Launch Festival site? Hey, can we get this up on the Launch Mobile site? Hey, on the Scale Conference, on this, on that. It instantly gets done. It's easy to use. Squarespace makes beautiful websites so simply. They have all these great design templates. You pick one, and all of a sudden, it looks like you spent $250,000 on your website. Literally, these designers a lot of designers are very upset. A lot of web shops are very upset about Squarespace. I've seen this many times where they would normally spend, people would spend $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 on a website, and Squarespace does it for dollars a month, like $10 a month. It's unbelievably affordable. And everything, it starts at $8 a month, by the way. Everything is responsive. So when you pull it up on your iPad or your phone, you have to pinch and zoom to see the website. It all just works. And you're not at, bent over a barrel by all these crazy developer freelancers who then disappear for months. They go, on a hike and they go bike across the United States while your website still isn't responsive or still isn't working. You need to have a professional group behind your website website, and that is Squarespace. They also support e-commerce now, and they just keep adding features. Like they have a calendar feature that's really good right now, and there's all these little plugins and little, craftsmanship that make the site look so good. I love the product. You can start your free trial today with no credit card required. And when you decide to sign up for Squarespace, please use the offer code TWIST to get 10% off your first purchase. Squarespace, build it beautiful. Build it beautiful. Please. It's a lot of ugly stuff going on in the world. A lot of ugly websites. Just use Squarespace and make the world beautiful. That's not their tagline. But I love beautiful websites. When I see a beautiful website for a conference, I buy a ticket. When I see a beautiful website for a product, I buy the product. When I see a beautiful website for a service or a startup, I want to meet with them. Go to squarespace.com and have a great, beautiful website. It's trusted by millions of people, including some of the most respected brands of the world. Their technology is state-of-the-art, secure, easy to use, scalable. You don't need to have a developer do it. I could talk for days. Thank you, Squarespace, for being one of my longest-running sponsors for This Week in Startups. I truly appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Okay, let's get back to the program. All right, welcome back to This Week in Startups. My guest is Bryan Johnson. You can follow Bryan Johnson, BRYAN_Johnson on the Twitter. Are you active on Twitter?
I am.
Okay, good. I'm gonna put what I do is I follow everybody because I don't want to make anybody feel bad. But then I turn on notifications. That's my thing. I turn on notifications for people, and then I get the little alert. Bryan posted something.
So you create all this suspense and mystery. Like, am I on Jason's notifications list?
Nobody knows. That's why I like it. And then I make some private lists of people I want to check in on.
Do you ever privately reveal who's on the list?
I don't, but like people who I'm an investor in their company, or they've been a guest on the program, or I just generally find them fascinating. So there's some weird people on there that you wouldn't think. Like I have William Gibson alerts because I think he's just like really interesting on Twitter. And I had Patton Oswalt on for a little while because I thought he's really funny. And then I turn people off. So I don't have Patton Oswalt and William Gibson on right now because they're pretty ridiculous. But I have Krasak on, one of my good friends. I have Chamath on, one of my good friends. So when they do an alert and I'm on Twitter, it comes in and then I click it and then I'm the first person to star their thing. And so people are just like, are you on Twitter all day? It's like, no, I got an alert. So I look down on my phone. Oh, Chamath said something. Boom, I go and I can respond. All right, what's the next interesting company you've invested in here?
Human longevity.
Okay, so now this is interesting. What is this? I'm pulling it up right here on my site. We can show the website. Okay, go ahead. Tell me.
So the Craig Venter is leading the charge. He's there
I know
with
about this one, yeah.
Peter Diamandis and Bob Hariri. And
Yes.
The premise behind this is the last big breakthrough we had on human longevity increase was germ theory. Like what you were saying before, when we figured out there was bacteria that caused infection that caused people to die. And once we figured out vaccination, sterilization, antibiotics, we radically extended healthy human life.
Yeah.
And so this goes back to like the
No
OS fund.
no unnecessary deaths from septic shock and all this crazy stuff. We were talking before the show about the Checklist Manifesto, a great book where just doctors were killing people because they didn't have clean scalpels.
So like the question for you would be like, say you lived 200 or 300 years ago, right? And you're in the medical profession. And you ask the question to yourself, how could I make the biggest impact in humanity, specifically on health?
Right.
And maybe you could say, well, I could build a new surgical tool that makes a small incision instead of a big incision, or I can do these clamps that helps this, right? Whatever. So and this is how we think at the OS Fund. So basically, if you would have thought, if you discovered that this bacteria was a problem, the core problem behind all the medical issues, that creating a new surgical instrument was irrelevant. It was bacteria that was the problem. And so human longevity has the same core thesis. If they're correct, that you can take the whole human genome and then combine that with phenotype data and the microbiome and other data, and then use applied machine learning, that it could be the biggest breakthrough in human life expectancy since germ theory.
Right.
Because today we just have complex biology and it just doesn't work very well.
Right. So we might be able to figure out through our biome, which is what's in your gut. Is that right?
So
and human genomics, what's in your DNA.
Yeah, it's a software that runs your body.
Right.
And so if you can take that, if you can convert atoms into bits.
Got it.
And then learn about why the body behaves the way it does and use that for personalized medicine and drug discovery, it's possible we could extend healthy human lives like 100, 120, who knows? I mean, it could be the most radical extension we've had in a while.
So if we know, gosh, these are the precursors to cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, we might be able to actually intercept them early, reprogram our own DNA or something, and actually get there. And so they've raised a decent amount of money for this company, huh?
Yeah.
How much have they raised? Do you know off the top of your head?
Series A, I think, was around 80 million or so.
Yeah.
And we're currently doing another round of funding that's pretty sizable.
Wow. And then stem cells is going to be a big part of this too. And that goes back to regulation, back to your number one, the operating system.
Right.
How is the stem cell regulation affecting all of this? Are we pro stem cell yet?
So I'm not close enough to the debate to know.
Right.
My bet on human longevity is that we need a new approach if we want to deal with health in the way we want to extend our lives. And I think this is the most promising avenue we could take.
What do you think? And there's also a Larry Page and a Sergey Brin project. I forgot the
Calico,
name.
yeah.
Calico. So there's two of these. Are they pursuing the same concepts generally,
I mean, there is some overlap.
Yeah.
And Calico's pretty tight-lipped. From what I do understand, it's a different framework on how they understand the world. And from what I do understand, I would bet heavily on human longevity as the right thesis. But I'm glad there's different approaches. I mean, it's...
Is this going to affect us? You think? How old are you? 40?
37.
You're 37. Accomplished a lot for 37. I'm 44. Making me feel like a slacker. So it's one of the great things about having this program. It's like everybody on the program by default is more successful than I am. So is this going to affect us in our lifetime, or is it going to affect our kids?
No, definitely.
Definitely will affect
I'd say
us.
in the coming years.
So next 10 years,
Next 5 years.
things will come down the pipe that could radically extend our life.
Yeah, we've already at human longevity. We've already started to make really serious. I want to say insights, discoveries about how this could be useful. And so, having seen this work internally, I'm extremely excited about things that could happen next 3, 5, 7 years.
Really, that soon? It's interesting because I asked Craig Ventnor and George Church, I guess was his partner over there in Harvard for a bit, and I asked them both, like, given where we are, this is maybe 5 years ago, and I said, you guys have been working on this for decades. 10 years ago, where did you think we'd be today?
Exactly.
And you know what they said? I didn't think we would be where we are today in 50 years. I was like, really? They're like, this is going, I didn't think that we'd be this far in our lifetime. So there's something that's actually now getting faster. The pace of innovation is getting much faster with big data, et cetera. Do you have any artificial intelligence or big data investments yet, or are those hard to come by?
So I'm invested in Vicarious.
Okay.
Scott Phoenix doing that. So AI is a big area of interest.
What do you think about the AI debate vis-a-vis Elon Musk and Larry Page buying, what's the company they bought?
DeepMind.
DeepMind. There was some crazy stuff going on there. I don't know how much of it's public, but I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people around this. I won't say who, but they basically had a clock or something they were working on. The clock sort of became self-aware, is what somebody told me. But the clock actually understood, like, I'm kind of like a clock, and I'm here, and there's a network around me. Like, the clock started to figure out, like, its existence. I don't know if they were exaggerating or not, but how far do you think they've gotten? Because some of the stuff that was going on there, people alluded to that it is a little bit scary. And obviously Elon Musk he was on the board of it for a bit. He didn't want them to sell to Google. That's all very public information. He felt they were going too fast without guide rails.
Right.
What do you think?
So, I mean, for the past year, I've been to, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 private gatherings on AI, where a small group of maybe 10 to 15 people.
The one that happened in Puerto Rico?
I was not there.
Okay.
But people who are well-known names who are in the space. And what's been interesting to me on this in these conversations is the difference of opinion. I mean, it's all over the map, from people who think it's imminent and a huge threat to those who think it's so far out that it's not all that big of a threat. And so,
is there some common denominator between, or some trend that you can identify of why somebody would fall into each camp?
So the question I asked is, after hearing all these different opinions, I asked this group one night, I said, okay, so let's take the Donald Rumsfeld framework, right? Let's take known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. Let's try to bucket it, which is inherently hard because you don't know unknown unknowns, so you don't know where to assign the percentage, right?
Right.
But where's our best guess? Like, do we know the coding pathway to make something self-aware, and it's just a matter of time to figure that out? Is it like some wild card, some phenomenon that's going to happen? And we couldn't answer it. Like, we didn't know where it was at in the spectrum. And so I personally don't have an opinion on this. I do know it's obviously a very serious question, and we need to take it very seriously and address it and think about it and prepare for it and plan. So I'm all in favor of having this debate. I just have no idea where it falls in the spectrum. So it's just been fascinating to be in the community, understanding how these people think and how they're trying to quantify risk and place their bets on what they're trying to do.
Yeah, because one of the interesting debates I heard was somebody was like, well, what if they, you teach it, just to make humans happy and make them content and not feel pain? Well, what if the computer decides, well, God, life is filled with so much pain that the quickest way to have no pain is to euthanize everybody?
Right.
I mean, it literally it's a pretty logical conclusion. If our lives are filled with pain, from back pain to death and sorrow, it put us out of our misery.
Yeah.
Pretty simple prime directive.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And those are all the scenarios these groups talk about, like what happens if, right? And there was one thing this one gentleman said that I thought was striking. He said that, I think it was with the atom bomb. I think he said something like the world's expert, the day before there was this massive discovery, he said there is no possible way this can be done. And he was like the world's expert. I hope I'm getting this right. And then like the next day, the discovery was made. It's like, oh,
I guess
that's wrong. And so like the unpredictable nature of breakthrough, I think, is the biggest question here. Yeah.
And then do we have the capacity to understand what the usage of this technology is?
Yeah.
And one of the most fascinating discussions I was in was people talking about the dropping of the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is obviously very tragic. Their thesis was this might have saved so many lives because those people who died and how horrific it was might have been so horrific that everybody realized, my God, we can never drop these again.
Yeah.
Whereas if it had actually been used in an escalated war where both sides had been using them, it might have been so horrific for both parties, the anger, and look what we did on 9/11. We were like, oh, you killed 3,000 people. We're just going to go on a decade-long war. We're going to just take out countries that were involved, not involved. We're going to torture people. I mean, we got totally knocked off of our center, which was to not commit torture and to, be justified in the killing of people. Both of those things we failed miserably on in the last 10 years. I don't know if you feel differently, but I think the statistics point to we made some mistakes.
You asking my opinion on that?
Well, it's an open-ended one.
But I think like this is the larger point that I think is relevant is that we have some really serious decisions to make as people on planet Earth.
Yeah.
And we do so right now between nation states and in companies, and we have difference of opinions and we think different things are going to happen. And it's just this really complex ecosystem of how we actually work together to thrive because what people do affects everyone, right? And so it's a very complicated question. And that's why, again, like the operating systems of cooperation and governance to me is so central to how we contemplate our existence.
What do you think about the sort of disruptive nature of startups today? I mean, you have people who are in the technology industry saying, hey, just break some rules and beg for forgiveness.
Yeah.
That's sort of the standard approach, which is, hey, there's some antiquated protectionist laws out there. Airbnb is the example people use a lot, which is, hey, you have a couch, you should be able to rent it. And if there's some laws about you not being able to rent it, well, we'll deal with that later. You generally subscribe to, hey, we gotta break some eggs if we're gonna make the omelet approach?
I do like the friction in society. There's certainly give or take, and there's appropriateness of doing so. I mean, I think in certain areas, like for example, with synthetic biology, I think that we need to be extremely thoughtful about people in their basement messing around, creating smallpox and anthrax, right? So like,
it's possible.
Yeah, it's just I think.
Is it possible? How possible is all that?
It's not impossible. I mean, I think it's more difficult than people assume. But I think that in all these areas, right, AI, synthetic biology, doing things like weapons, 3D printing a gun, like they all have this friction. Like one thing is like renting out my couch. Another thing is 3D printing a gun.
Yeah, that seems like
or creating anthrax.
When you're 3D printing a gun, you're just poking the tiger. Like, if it's one thing to rent your couch, like, hey, I need to make a little extra cheddar, and obviously, like, you're just trying to get the taxes, and I need to make ends meet. It's my couch, but I mean, printing a 3D gun is pretty insane.
Yeah, but I guess you probably get. I don't take very strong opinions on certain things. I see it as more of a complicated ecosystem where there's a bunch of give and take.
What's your take on all that 3D printing guns? Because are you invested in any 3D printing companies?
I don't think I am.
I got to introduce you to this 3D printing company I'm investing in. It's just insane. I can't say anything about it, but oh my God.
I'd love to learn about it.
It's so exciting. I wish I could. I can't. I mean, next year I'll have them on the program when they're ready. But my God, is that a space that is really gone faster as well?
It's remarkable. It's amazing how fast it's gone.
Yeah.
And the implications are unbelievable.
What is the implication that you think is most interesting about 3D printing? Because that was another one that I just totally missed like an idiot. These are two big lessons for me, drones and 3D printing.
Yeah.
which is I thought they were dumb because I couldn't see the applications, and I
Right.
thought they were so far out.
Right.
And then I realized, like, God, everything is dumb and like awkward
Yeah.
in the early days. Like, we're all awkward teenagers
Yep.
with going through puberty, these
Yep.
startups, and then all of a sudden you're not.
Yep.
You know?
Exactly.
And as an investor, you kind of have to suspend disbelief, but this, like, you know, this awkward kid is going to turn into a beautiful adult who's going to be super talented and change the world.
Totally agree. I mean, like the image that comes to my mind on that is Leonardo da Vinci,
Yeah.
where he had his sketchbook, and he sketched out flying machines and scuba. Right, he had all these fantastic ideas, but he didn't have the tools to build it.
Yeah.
The difference between him and us is we have the tools to do it.
Yeah.
And so the distance between imagination and creation is basically down to nothing. So with 3D printing, I can imagine something, I can print it. I
Yeah.
can imagine something, I can code it in computer software or biology or genomics. So we live in a society where you imagine and you create near instantaneously.
Yeah. That is going to be so interesting. What do you think about the alternative foods, 3D printing of body parts / steaks? Have you seen
Yeah.
some of this coming down the pipe, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, once something becomes a code base to be programmed,
Yeah.
it's this inevitable train that rolls, and that's happening with food and biology and everything else that can be programmed.
Yeah.
And so we have these big debates, but we've never, as a species, been able to stop the development of a technology. No matter how dangerous it is,
Yeah.
we have never been able to stop the use and development of it.
The use we've seemed to have mitigated. We did pretty good with the nuclear weapons.
So far, we've had them
So
for
far.
just a couple decades.
That's true. Yeah, we've had, well, maybe close to 50 years now. So we've had them for a half a century, but you're right. I mean, there's nothing that says the next 20 years couldn't be a free-for-all with nuclear bombs. Let's hope not.
And to your point, the things that worry you, right? Like these threats will always exist, but I mean,
Yeah.
but we've never said as a species, hey, X is a really dangerous technology. Let's just kind of we'll stop that.
Yeah.
And not worry, right? Everything moves forward in full speed, and so we have to figure out how to properly develop it for.
But actually, you know what is interesting? I'll take a counterpoint on that. Because you talked before about, like, number one, the systems in government.
Yeah.
We have worked pretty diligently to try to get the bad actors in the world, or just the number of nation states. We've actually worked economically with carrots and sticks to just tell people, you don't need to build bombs. And we've tried to keep nuclear proliferation to, like, 10 people have the bombs? And then everybody else is like, well, why can't I have a bomb?
That's
It's
right.
France and Pakistan and North Korea, China, United States, England,
Israel.
Israel. Who else has the bomb? It's a good question. I don't even know off the top of my head, but I think I named most of them. Germany have the bomb?
I was thinking the same. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure if Germany has the bomb. Producer Jackie, we want to know everybody who's producer Jackie will tell me, and then we'll that'll be a little teaser. But we want to know, producer Jackie, exactly who has the bomb. I know. Okay, let's go over the dangerous people with the bomb. Pakistan, North Korea, possibly Iran.
Yep.
China would be like in the gray zone. We don't know. Russia in the gray zone. And then we got the good guys, France, England, United States. That's 8. Who am I missing? Canada doesn't have it. Mexico doesn't have it. Who else has? Here we go. A list of states with nuclear weapons. This is a really interesting one. Okay. Designated nuclear weapon states. China, France, Russia, United Kingdom, United States. We got those. Other states, India, Pakistan. All right, of course, India.
Yep.
India's got sophisticated ones. Pakistan's got ones that they can't kind of shoot straight. North Korea, same thing. They got them. They can't shoot. Israel, obviously. Nuclear weapon sharing states. Belgium, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, Turkey. That means they're under NATO, so that doesn't count.
Yeah.
States formally possessing nuclear weapons. Super interesting. What are the states formally? This is interesting. Who would have formally had nuclear weapons that doesn't have them anymore? It's really fascinating.
I don't know.
Well, it's the Eastern Bloc. So Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and
Oh,
Belarus
sure.
used to have them. And South Africa used to have them. So I guess South Africa
I didn't know that.
must have been dearmed. But it's very interesting that you think about the small number of states who actually have it. And actually, Israel is thought to have nuclear weapons, but that's actually not confirmed, which I didn't know either. So actually, that puts it at 3 bad act. Well, I wouldn't say India is a bad actor, but certainly Pakistan and North Korea are very bad actors. And actually, Pakistan is the ones. The Pakistani guy was the guy who gave it to everybody.
Yeah, you're seeing the volatility index of usage.
Yeah. So, but China, France, Russia, United Kingdom, United States, that's the big 5 who have reasonable governments who don't want to use these. And then you have India, Pakistan, North Korea. India I would put in the reasonable camp too. So that's 8. And then Israel would be 9. So it's like 9. It's fascinating. That's one where we have kind of throttled it, haven't we?
I agree. So I agree that we've been successful in that there's been no accidents.
And also, people are not advancing the technology, or are they? I don't even think the United States and China are advancing it. What do you think? Do you think we have secret stealth programs to make better nuclear weapons? I wonder.
I don't know.
The Chinese are doing it for sure. The Chinese don't care about any rules. I mean, they're putting plaster and baby formula.
But I do wonder, though, if considering these new tools of technology, genomics, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, AI, I wonder if the resources are being channeled in those areas more than nuclear at this point.
Yeah. What would be a more reasonable attack? A cyber attack?
Right.
On a power grid?
That's right.
Or a nuclear bomb?
Right.
Or a financial attack?
Yeah. There's better ways now to use weapons. There's better weapons to use.
You see the series Mr. Robot?
No, I haven't.
You haven't seen it?
No.
My God, you have to see this, and then we'll have dinner afterwards.
Okay.
And you're going to totally love it. Well, it's just basically hackers messing with the whole world. All right, let's talk about a couple more of Bryan Johnson's amazing investments. We had human longevity, super interesting that we're going to try to live longer. How old are we going to live, you think, on average? Plus 10?
No, so I think germ theory was a couple decades.
So maybe plus 20?
I think we could get more. I think we could do 100, 120.
That's amazing.
What do I know in saying that, right? I just think it could be a big boost. It could be a big jump.
What do you think living that much longer will do for society? Because now we have 3 generations. We have older people, wiser people. Mm-hmm. We have multi-generational wealth. We have a lot of interesting things that happen when people go 3 generations concurrent, 4 generations. This would be 5, 6 generations concurrent.
I read this interesting book. This gentleman wrote this book from the year like 3200.
3200.
Yeah, and then he wrote like the 100 most influential people in that century or something like that.
Hilarious.
And he was referencing back to like the year 2500 when there was a big breakthrough and people lived to be a couple hundred years of age. And he said, yeah, before then, all the humans were just barbaric. They were also young and driven by status and power and overcoming, that once people matured and became older, the world is kind of chilled out. And this was the author's perspective. But it was like this framing of, if you change the age that we live and you change the state of mind at which we're at, what would it do to the world and how we deal with each other in conflict and cooperation? And I just thought there was this fascinating question to raise. Like, what implications are there that we haven't contemplated? We think about like social security and food supply and other stuff, but like, what about global cooperation, about how we work together?
Yeah, because the problems, if we live to 200, we'd really be thinking about the impact of global warming. We'd really be thinking about transportation. We'd really be thinking about energy in a completely different way. The people who work at companies today are incented by their current contract, which is probably, let's face it, 10 quarters or 8 quarters, or whatever I don't know what most CEOs last at public companies now. I'm going to guess the average CEO at a public company probably lasts, what do you think, 12 quarters?
Yeah.
I'm going to guess 3 years, 12 quarter.
Yeah.
Because a lot of guys and gals get fired after 6, and then some people last twice as long. So I'm going to guess, that's another good question for Producer Jackie. Producer Jackie, what's the average tenure of a publicly traded CEO? In real time, we're doing research. That's what having a 4-time Emmy Award-winning producer for a podcast.
33 months. I'll take that one.
I'm going to take the over on that. 33 months would be just under 3 years. I'm going to take the over on that.
All right.
That's one we can do right now and get sushi now. Same sushi lunch bet. Okay, Jackie, remember, I took the over. When you do your research, remember I took the over. I think the current tenure is going to be over 33 months because there's some guys who've been in the job for 10 years. They got to skew it, but who knows? But they're all thinking, the point is, if you're in that job, like when you look at the music industry, the reason they're not thinking about the long term, in the long term, how the music industry should be run is because they've got a 2-year contract, a 3-year contract, not a 10-year contract.
Yeah. So maybe the answer to the question is, if we live to 100 or 120, what will it do? The question is, what will it not change? Right, is likely the answer.
What will not change?
What will it not change? In other words, it will change everything. How we understand the world, how we understand our places in it, what we aspire to, how we structure.
You'd have the time to have. Right now, we all tend to have like maybe 2 acts, 3 acts in our lives. You have like in your 20s, just F around. You finally get it together. You have your first act, and then maybe you go on to a second. Average tenure of CEO has declined to 8.4 years. the Conference Board reports.
Oh, wow. You killed that one.
You owe me sushi.
Yeah.
This is so great. He's rich and he's going to buy me sushi.
I lost pretty badly on that one.
Brian and I are going to have
I
some
was
sushi.
70.
Where do you live now?
I'm between New York,
Good masa.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm going to be stopping through there. Have you been to Masa, New York?
I have not.
Oh, good. See, this is perfect. Where else do you live?
Spent time here in San Francisco.
Oh, cool.
And then also DC.
Oh, DC.
Yeah.
Do you interface a lot with the government, or you kind of just put that on the back shelf for now?
It's on the back burner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just that when you think about like everything driving them, it's so money driven. Is that the biggest problem in the United States with the politics? Is the hand of money guiding everything? Do you think?
So, I guess my framework was this. Before, when I looked at it, we were 13 colonies, and we had to decide how to cooperate against bigger places like Spain and England and France. And we put together the Virginia Plan, right? They said we'll have a lower house and upper house, and they saw the difference between the competing interests of populations and power and stuff like that. And they came together, they had the Constitutional Convention, they put together a framework for us to have a federal system, for us to come together and work together. I think we're at another point in time where we need something like a Virginia Plan, like something that a theoretical revolution prior to a practical revolution. So when the founders got together to write the Constitution, they referenced like John Locke and others who had thought through these things long ahead of time, where the ideas could be marinated, discussed, debated. I think we're at a point where we need to really seriously contemplate how we want to cooperate as a society.
In the United States, specifically.
Yes. So because if something were to happen and we had a chance to actually reconsider these things, it would be really helpful if we'd thought through them ahead of time.
Yes.
And really thought
So
through
if we
it.
wound up having a civil war because of abortion or gun control or something, what would we actually be fighting over, and what could be a possible solution?
Right, because these exogenous events happen, and then this window of change opens up, like happened during the Civil War, happened during the Great Depression, the financial crisis, 9/11, like the Patriot Act went into play. So these small windows open up where we have this big change go into place.
Yeah, never let a crisis go to waste.
Exactly, right? So we need to
That's
have
what the evil people say.
Yeah. I
have
mean,
to-
everyone says that, right? It's true.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'm most concerned that we as a society need to be thoughtful about what we're going to do and why.
Let's talk about terrorism. I like having you on the show because you're willing to talk about stuff and you thought about it. Let's talk about terrorism. Is it that big of a threat, or are we overreacting to it? More people die from, and listen, my brother's a firefighter, and I'm not going to minimize the tragedy of 9/11. I was there. I had PT. Literally, I mean, I've confessed this on the show in the last year because I really don't talk about my personal life all that much, but I literally had PTSD from it, and I went to therapy to get treated for PTSD because every time I saw an ambulance or 9/11, I started crying, and I just got very sad. And it's really actually helped me a lot to get through that. But it does seem to me now, and part of getting through it for me was realizing, my God, more people are dying from bee stings. It's actually a really manageable problem, this terrorism thing. As horrific as it is to see innocent people die, we actually got through it. And the question is, can you get through horrible things in life without losing who you are? That's actually where I got to. What do you think about terrorism today? Would you think this is as big of an issue, or is it that because we have this visual stimulus of seeing the ISIS videos, or if people choose to watch them, which is another huge debate, do you think it's a very manageable thing compared to global warming, energy, disease, famine, et cetera? Where do you put it on your list of things to worry about, I wonder?
So I typically don't opine about such a wide range of topics because I don't consider myself to have.
I know.
Okay, so.
But listen, you're a human being and you're affected by terrorism.
Yeah.
And you think about things, you read the papers. So just as a normal guy, what do you think?
So I mean, terrorism, I guess I would categorize. I'd say it's a psychological threat of me being harmed.
Right.
When it's a surprise, right? So it's not like I'm going to contract heart disease. It's a surprise that I'm on a bus that gets blown up. And so it's the unknown that is very unsettling. And so I think terrorism exists in so many forms, right? In our daily lives, these random events can happen to us.
Short car accidents.
Yeah, so it's been sensationalized with videos, like you said, and the news reports. But I think it's always going to exist. The psychological threat of an unknown event happening to you always exists, and we're just accustomed to it. So I think we've become maybe more accustomed to that thought process psychologically in society.
Yeah.
But like you said, these events haven't happened, and so therefore in our mind we've said we've beat it or overcome it or whatever. But I think it's always going to exist, no matter what state we are.
See, I'm glad that you commented on it, Brian. And I'm glad that you're brave enough to talk about these issues openly on a show like this, because it is, if you think about Israel, you think about Europe, they've been through these bombings, the IRA bombings, Israel, Hamas, et cetera. they actually have learned to live great, robust lives, even though that psychological terror does exist in the world. I think the United States, we just got off so easy of never having attacked since Pearl Harbor. And that was a very abstract attack that is not really captured in our imaginations on film. Where 9/11 and the ISIS videos, I mean, ISIS is so sinisterly brilliant in their approach. I don't know if you've ever watched any of the videos. I have watched them. I think it's actually important to watch them if you can stomach it, to understand what you're up against. These are sadistic
So I agree.
bastards.
My 12-year-old watched that video.
Your 12-year-old son or daughter?
My son.
He watched one of the videos of a
he-
beheading or people being lit on fire or
Somehow
drowned.
he saw a video.
Got it.
And
That's an interesting
he
discussion.
came to me and he said, Dad, have you seen this? And can we talk about this? And
You must have a good relationship with him that he came to you to talk about that.
But it's to the point.
What did you say? You watched it?
I just wanted to inquire of him, like, what did you see? How did you feel about it? How'd you come across it? Right? What does that make? Right? So I just wanted to understand his emotions and how he was processing that information.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to offer any opinions, other than I just wanted to understand how he now saw his place in Earth, in life,
Species, yeah.
Yeah, and so and then when he goes to school, how's he feel? Does he feel safe now? But like you're saying, it's an introduction of a threat that we need to put into our minds somewhere, and then we need to function somehow with that. Hopefully, right? Be functional without it really causing PTSD or becoming such a nuisance we don't become functional in life.
Massive anxiety attacks.
Right.
Have, right. For a 12-year-old, they could start to have anxiety about
Yeah.
that.
But I mean, it goes back to the availability of information, of how easy it is for people to consume it and what it does to us psychologically.
Yeah.
And it was just this really interesting experience I had as a father to see him consume information, because I've always been worried about myself on the information I consume and what it does to my brain.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something we'll have to deal with over the years and get better at as a society.
Yeah. It's very interesting to know that there are people in the world who are so disenfranchised and they're so radicalized, so consumed by this hatred and religion and using religion as the tool, unfairly, that they can do these acts and then record them in order to cause this, right? You have to just think it gets to human nature. Now that you've become the investor philosopher, what do you think the nature of man is vis-a-vis this sort of evil in the world? How do you reconcile that yourself when you look at it?
I sincerely hope that no one wants to do harm to someone else, right?
Yeah.
For any reason. And I don't know how we get there, but I think that it's worth striving towards that goal, that we are driven by compassion, and that's our defining attribute.
Right.
And I think it's worthwhile that we contemplate things in cooperation and ideologies that get us to a place where we have compassion for everyone. I know the endeavors I'm working on now with the companies I'm working on, I don't necessarily categorize things between good and evil, right and wrong. I think that the world is just gray.
Yeah.
And there are some things that are clearly, I think, undesirable for people to do. But I do think that it's important that we don't create these really fine lines in our mind about who the bad guys are, who the good guys are, because it's not always that easy. Right?
No.
It's
look at the Middle East. I mean, you look at what's happening, in Israel and with Hamas and with the Palestinians. I mean, people are being blown up on both sides. I see this debate on Twitter where I have two very close friends, one of which is Chris Sacca. I won't say the person's name, and then I have other friends who are Jewish and Matt Acco and other people who I'm friendly with, and they're debating. And Mark Suster, who's killing more babies? Who's killing more children?
Yeah.
And it's just like, wow, there's kids dying everywhere in this mess of a conflict.
I remember reading in Abraham Lincoln's biography, and he was talking about how he received letters from both the South and the North. And both were saying, we're praying to God, right? That we, the good guys, will beat them, the bad guys.
Right.
And Abraham Lincoln made the comment that they both sincerely thought they were on the right side of the fight, that they were on God's side, and the other one was the one in error. And he grappled with this moral quandary of how do you reconcile when two sides see themselves as a similarly righteous position to take, and that God is on your side. And I mean, it's the complexity of being human.
There is an amazing song, a Bob Dylan song, with God on their side, and the lyrics are exactly about the Civil War II and the different wars, and just how everybody thinks they've got God on their side when they're doing these murderous and crazy things. And yeah. It's interesting coming full circle to your time as a missionary, essentially, and then to what you're doing now. It feels like this is the modern day mission. It's a modern day missionary. You're a modern day missionary using the tool of entrepreneurship and investing to try to just steer the helpfulness of these tools and the helpfulness of what they could do. And it does seem disparate, right? When you first start looking at what we do. And you don't want to give yourself too much credit, right? And you don't want to be all holier than thou. But the truth is, if these drones work and you can get medicine to people, the suffering is going to go down.
Right.
This is just, and if people can communicate and experience the world and each other in virtual reality or, something like that, they're going to have a deeper understanding of each other.
Yeah, I
and
agree.
it's going to lower wars.
I agree.
And if people live longer, they're going to philosophically look at the world differently because they're going to think not only about their kids and their kids' kids, but their kids' 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 kids.
Yeah.
This is a mind F. Sorry to be vulgar, but it is a total mind F of, my God, the stuff you're working on, it takes 2 steps to get there. It takes an hour of this program to sort of get there. But I think what you learned in this religion, which has been made fun of and tortured in a Broadway play, and religion is kind of wacky. You seem to have stepped away from it a little bit. But you did take the good piece out of it.
You
took the good piece out of it.
I'm very grateful. I mean, I learned so many things being raised Mormon about community and compassion and caring and being of service. I really do appreciate that upbringing. I also have never, ever been more motivated, determined, and excited about what I'm working on.
Yeah.
And I'm so bullish on what we can build on planet Earth. I mean, clearly there's a lot of threats. We've talked about a lot of dark things during the conversation.
Yeah.
Right? And those they're omnipresent and they will always be present. But
Right.
I'm bullish that we can rise to the occasion, that we can actually make the thoughtful considerations and build the things we need to create desirable lives.
See, this is why I think, the technology people should be in charge. We should all get like 10 votes every else. I'm joking. This is where there's a group of people who have got off the rails, though, who feel like almost like aristocrats, like where...
It's like Plato's idea, right?
Yeah, it's just like there's a group of...
Philosopher kings.
Yeah, where they get to sort of make the decisions.
Yeah.
And there is a feeling in the world that, Larry Page or Peter Thiel or Sean Parker, whoever, people with great vast amounts of wealth and ability to impact society, you would fall into the category, are maybe be reaching levels of power and ability to affect humanity that makes them like these philosopher kings. What's your counter argument to that? You earned it?
I don't think I would make a counter argument to that. I think that my viewpoint of the world is that I want to see 7+ billion perspectives, ideas, desires coexist and thrive.
Yeah.
That no one person or a group of people could superimpose structure on anyone else. And
except for the ones who have vast amounts of wealth and technology on their side.
I think we need to figure out how to cooperate together. And it's people have very strong preferences and opinions and perspectives, and we see the world from very different angles, like we've talked about.
Yeah.
Right? North and South War, the Middle East, whatever. I mean, people have very strong opinions about what they do. And so, and I don't think we're ever going to be able to reconcile that in ways that by imposing it on someone else.
See, the thing I find very interesting is there is, I think, an existential argument that, like, oh my God, polarization of wealth and the speed at which society and companies are growing is troubling and could result in, a new set of robber barons, whatever. But in practice, almost everybody I meet who has had some degree of this outlier success eventually comes to a conclusion that there is a responsibility, a serious, great responsibility to take what you've benefited from and to put it to use to make our species just a little bit better, a little bit better off than when you got there and when you got that bounty.
I agree. And I would categorize it as a privilege.
It is a privilege
to get to work on these things. And all these tools of creation, like the genomics play and biology and drones, all these things benefit very broad spectrum of people. Like, it's not for the rich, right? It's to bring all of society up. And so they're very democratized is overused, but they're tools to bring all of society up together.
Right, and it's impossible to stop technology from becoming cheaper, faster, better. I mean, if you wanted to make cell phones an elite device, you couldn't. It's just, the fact is, people who are at the top want to get the better iPhone. The iPhone from 3 years ago and the iPhone from today, compared to no iPhone 10 years ago, I mean, you get about 98% of the value of the phone if you have any of the phones from the last 5 years.
Yeah.
When you think about it, right?
Yeah.
So the $25 Android phone versus the latest iPhone 6S, if you were to compare the two experiences, you can call an Uber on both, you can text on both, you can surf the web on both. Not having it is the issue, right? And with the stuff you're working on, I think it's going to very quickly trickle down. It's a case where trickle down actually does happen. Hey, tell me about this. I want to pull up this your strategy here. What is this chart we're looking at? It says here, first pass due diligence in company and industry, identify the factors. You seem like a pretty process-oriented guy.
Yeah. So this is
what is this?
This is from our white paper we published this week. And so the idea behind this is that if we are to thrive on planet Earth, we need to make continued scientific breakthroughs.
Sure.
But there is not sufficient funding in scientific endeavors. And there's a whole reason why. Like government, for example, funds more incremental type things, and venture capital funds more like software, internet. I think last year there was something like $48 billion or something like that, and half of it went into internet software, $6 billion went into biotech. And so I asked this question to myself. We launched the fund, and I said, how could I deploy capital trying to accomplish scientific breakthroughs when I myself don't have a scientific background? And so it's the bigger problem of the world because most of the wealth in the world is maintained by people who don't have scientific expertise.
Right.
So they're going to invest in transportation and real estate and areas where they do understand.
Yeah,
right?
Donald Trump last night was giving advice on vaccines. And I'm like, is it really the country is taking advice from Donald Trump on how to vaccinate their children? I think there's a group of people in Marin who are high-fiving each other that Donald Trump is now the person giving advice, this horrible advice. I'm like, did you see this last night?
I didn't see it, no.
It's just like he's going to be president of the United States. He's going to probably win the Republican nomination. And then who knows? This country's so insane. Maybe they are insane enough to put him as president. He's like, yeah, my position on the things is maybe you space them out a little bit and maybe we're being a little too aggressive. And I'm just like, your position on it should be, we need to have 10 really credible scientists and we need to do more research and we need to come up with a plan and everybody needs to collectively get educated on it. And the three scientists who I respect most are this person, this person, and this person. And here's their consensus. Yeah. That's the right answer. Not what Donald Trump thinks. Right?
It seems much more logical to me, yeah.
Okay, keep going through this chart.
Yeah, so the question we said is how do people in the world with money or access to money deploy capital to enable scientific breakthroughs to help humanity thrive? And we said really that if we could overcome the process of doing the due diligence and analysis of the company, we could help more people fund science. And so we wrote a white paper on this, and we open sourced our internal playbook about how we've been diligencing and researching these companies to deploy capital. And basically, it's a tool to help people invest in science-based endeavors.
Where can people find this?
On osfund.co.
osfund.co. Leave off the M. It's a .co. Very good domains. We're launch.co. And I see it here. You get your first pass of due diligence. You identify the factors that are affecting the risk, the reward, build a model structure, generate a scenario tree, collect the data, input data into a model and generate the output, perform sensitive analysis. Yeah,
and we're outsourcing all of our models, our spreadsheets, everything we have, we're giving out to anyone who wants to use it. And we want feedback, we want help, we want the broader community to work with us on this. We want it to be a community-based endeavor.
I think it's a smart idea because if you look at people's investment strategies, I'm an angel investor, obviously. A lot of what I do as an angel investor is I do gut-based. I look at the person's passion. I look at why they are doing this. And then I look at their level of execution, and then I just make a decision. And I try not to overthink it.
Exactly. It's 100% what we're getting at, right? Because so that would never work in science. That works in your world, right? In like software and internet, because you understand these heuristics and these models. But in looking at stem cells or nanobots or AI, it doesn't work. And so this model changes what humans can hold in working memory and also accounts for our own biases and limitations and creates a quantitative model to actually analyze a company and make a decision that keeps those things in check.
Right.
Exactly.
So my gut, because I'm a gut poker player, I'm a gut, gambler, which is why angel investing is so in my wheelhouse. But to do this at a level of, it's like when I meet people who are doing synthetic biology or Cambrian Genomics, who was on the program, and sadly the founder committed suicide. Like, I could never figure out if I should invest in that company because I don't know
That's
enough.
exactly right. That's why we built the model.
Yeah, because I talked to people who invested in Cambrian Genomics, and I had one group of people who were like, I love the guy. And another group of people were like, I don't get what he's doing, and it doesn't make scientific sense.
Right.
And so I was like, if people are making the decision because they're the person's enthusiasm, I get that. And then if a group of people who are the science people were like, I don't understand exactly what he's promising to people, this doesn't seem like it's legitimate.
Yep.
It was a very hard decision. Like, do you go with the enthusiasm or do you go with what the scientists people are saying, right?
Yep.
Especially given what you said before, is that the scientific breakthrough can sometimes, because that throws a little bit of a wrench in this algorithm, which is this unknown unknowns of what could catalyze all this.
That's right.
Where do you think the riskiest sector is, but that if we do figure it out, could have the greatest return/impact? Because you are dancing around a lot of things, but is there an area you look at and go, God, if there was only somebody who was super credible or had a super interesting theory about this, it'd be worth taking the 1 in 1,000 shot, 1 in 500 shot that they get it right.
So
because the ones you showed me, I'm looking at them, I'm like, these have 50-50 chances, 75% chances, 25% chance.
Yeah.
They have standard startup chances, I think. So they're a little bit more ambitious, but they look very reasonable when you have Craig Venter running it. Is there an area where you're just like, God, I wish somebody would just go really swing for the fences here?
So I think my answer is not going to satisfy you.
Okay.
The big one I like right now, genomics for a human extension. I like that one, but I also like biology. So
Explain.
the idea that just that we can now program computer code to process a credit card or run autopilot or record video, right? It's software that works and it performs certain functions. We can
Fly a
create
plane.
anything we want to do, we can theoretically program.
Right.
Right. It's maybe on a scale of difficulty. We now have the ability to program biology. We figured out that just like you can program zeros and ones, you can program biology, which means, and if you look back from space at planet Earth, Earth is a big ball of biology.
Right.
You're biology, I'm biology, the world
I
runs
know where
on
you're
biology.
going. You're going to terraforming
No, I'm saying we can program
the Earth.
anything.
Yeah.
Right. And so the companies we've invested in, like, for example, Ginkgo Bioworks, they're creating, today they're programming like fragrances and flavors and probiotics. But as we climb the complexity,
probiotics is stuff in your gut,
right. But if we climb the complexity curve on what we can program, it opens up our world to anything. And so the idea that we could actually program the software that runs us,
Bioworks here,
is remarkable to me. It's one of the most exciting things we are working with.
What do you think in 10 years we'll end on this? Where do you think that could be? If we start figuring out how to print stuff, are we going to be printing like, we're going to be like Sebastian in Blade Runner and printing, our little dolls to run around our house, and we're going to be printing the Nexus 6?
So the thought that comes to mind may not be the best analogy. The thought that I have is when the printing press was formed and people said, what's going to be printed?
Books.
I think
newspapers.
What is the message that's going to be printed, right? What are the words that we print, and how that affect people's world? It's just like it opens up anything, and I think the same is true with biology.
The Declaration of Independence is going to be printed, right?
Exactly. Like, what in the world can we print on this machine that would influence planet Earth? The same is true for biology.
The Bible is going to be printed and sent everywhere.
There you go.
Dianetics. Here we go. Back to religion. And so you're an atheist now? What's the story? Where do you land on religion? We'll land on that because that's a really complex one for you.
Yeah, they're complicated questions for me, and I've given this an enormous amount of thought. I'm not yet ready to talk about it publicly.
Do you believe in God? Or you're not sure?
I'm not ready to talk about it publicly. Obviously, I've given this an immense amount of thought.
You're going to start your own religion?
And I care a lot about people's beliefs and how it drives their behaviors. And I hope sincerely that all of our beliefs drive us towards compassion and helping others benefit their lives. But
that's a very Buddhist kind of belief system, right?
But I'm working my way through it. And
are you struggling through it?
Oh, it was it's been an enormous struggle, right? Because you, growing up in the Mormon faith, you get a playbook on answers. Like,
here they are.
Any question you have pretty close to an answer. And so you have certainty in existence. And when you step away from that, you go from certainty to 100% uncertainty.
Right.
Then you have to find your new grounds.
Now you're in the ocean. Oof.
And so I would say it's been unquestionably one of the hardest things I've ever experienced in my life.
How long were you in the church?
I grew up in the church.
Right. So until what time?
So it was kind of a gradual thing when I was trying to think through these things. But I mean, I officially left, I think, when I was 34, something like
Something
that.
like that. So a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because I have friends who are Scientologists or religious, etc. And it is interesting when they do leave or they do move on, and you have this sort of community and you have this framework,
Right.
and then you have no framework.
That's right.
And then maybe you
That's right.
lose a little bit of the community or all of the community,
Right.
and you also lose the framework. And then you're like, okay, well, how do I get that balance back? Right?
That's right. It's very shocking.
It is very shocking. But you know what the thing is? There's a whole other group of people who I think are shelving the question of God and then just looking at humanity and relieving suffering. And I wouldn't say it's a new religion, this technology and this sort of boldness that we have in our technology industry, techno-utopists, whatever we want to call this group of people, but that you fall into, I fall into, a lot of people fall into, I think, in this community. But there's an optimism, and there is a, even if we don't know the nature of God, we know the nature of humanity, and we know suffering, right? And we know friendship, and we know that we're in it together, and we know there's a lot of questions out there that we can solve, right? This is a very beautiful thing. It's a beautiful place to start.
Right.
And even if you don't have religion, you could have this belief set that is, we can solve major problems. And to me, that is the new religion, is that we have some ability to make life better for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And I applaud you for what you're doing, Bryan.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll tell you one thing, I guess, to end on, and I guess this is probably best manifestation of my belief right now. So my kids and I go out to the biking trail by our house. It's a popular one, a lot of runners and bikers. And we go out there and we have bottles of water, Gatorade, and power bars. And we put up signs on either side that says, pay it forward. And people ride by, run by, and we give them these drinks. And we yell out, free, please take it.
Yeah.
And everyone always looks at us with suspicion. Like,
of course.
What's your gig? Like,
you're putting race replays in there.
What's your angle? What's your
you're trying to sell timeshare.
What's your agenda? So they I don't have any money, or like, what group are you with? And we always just like, nothing. Like, we just are here to give this away. And they're shocked. Right. And then some people stop and it's like, well, why are you doing this? Like, and we're just, no, just want to do something nice, random and anonymous act of kindness. Right. And we do this, and it continually shocks people. And so I guess the things I try to instill in my kids and in my life as well is just kindness, right? Be kind to others around you and do these things that without an agenda, without some larger case I'm trying to accomplish, but just being nice. And
it's a nice bookend to Tim O'Reilly, who I had in the program just recently, and who, his philosophy is to give much more than you take out. Yeah. Right? His philosophy is you monetize a small portion of what you do. Basically, you give more than you take. You're a net giver. And so on that note, I'll thank Bryan Johnson for a fascinating hour on This Week in Startups, or plus. I don't even know how long we went, but this is the kind of discussions I want to have on This Week in Startups, to be honest. And people were asking me like, hey, 6 years into the show, 500 episodes, what do you want to do next? And I said, I really want to talk about the bigger issues with people who are thinking about them. Right. Because what happens is you build websites, you build payment systems, you build this, you build that. Uber is incredible. It's changing transportation. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, self-driving cars, now that's going to be really interesting. And artificial intelligence, the mind just naturally wants to go on to bigger and more heady things. Right? Yeah. And this is a great discussion of it. Hey, check out the OS Fund. They're OS Fund on Twitter. Bryan is Bryan_Johnson. And the playbook is at osfund.co. Thank you to all of our great sponsors for making independent media like This Week in Startups possible. Hey, thanks to my Chief of Staff, Bryce. He's awesome. And Ashley, you're doing a great job. John, thanks for all the hard work on the ticker. And Jake and Kevin and Jackie on the ones and the twos and keeping everything tight. Luke and Matt for keeping the lights on with those great sponsorship and sales and everything. Follow the show, TWI Startups on Twitter, Facebook. And if you want to really help and you got to the end of the program, one thing that I'll ask is, if the show's impacted you in some way, go ahead and share that by writing a review in the iTunes store or on Twitter or a blog post, because it makes everybody on the show feel really good and it spreads the good word of the show. Not to get all religious. You know what one of my top 5 films are? I wonder if you've seen it, The Mission.
I haven't seen it.
This is going to be a very important film for you to see.
We have 2 movies to watch now.
What was the other one I told you?
The Robot, you said, right?
Oh, Mr. Robot's the TV series. So definitely binge watch that. It's totally up your alley. But then watch the movie The Mission. Okay. It's Robert De Niro, Liam Neeson, Jeremy Irons. I mean, how's that for a cast? Yeah. Shot in location at the greatest waterfalls in the world in South America. And it's about the missionaries. And it's a redemption tale. But it is philosophically very deep. And it's a totally underappreciated, one of the most beautiful films ever made. The music is by Ennio Morricone. Morricone? Jackie, is it Morricone or Morricone? Anyway, Ennio Morricone. I'm saying it like I'm
yeah.
Italian, like it matters. But anyway, the most beautiful music you've ever heard in any movie soundtrack, except for maybe Blade Runner Vangelis is my other favorite. But Gabriel's Oboe is the famous song from it.
Yeah.
And you'll hear that song and you'll recognize it immediately. But the mission and the soundtrack are my recommendations for everybody, including Bryan, to watch this weekend. All right, we'll see you all next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.